it's late there in Munich, so I appreciate you guys staying awake for this.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And so, folks, I want to introduce you to Patrick Hardy. Raise your hand, sir. He's one half of the and Christian Hundertmark, who are both known as LAKER. You guys are stalled on my screen. Let me just reach out to everybody. Are they stalled on your screen? Are they frozen on the viewer's screen?
Okay.
Or is it just on my side? I just want to be sure. So if not, we'll refresh the screen. Can I get a thumbs up if they're okay on your end, everybody? Okay, good. Okay, so I'm gonna flip my screen, read a little bio about you guys, and then we'll start our conversation. Hailing from Munich, Germany, Patrick Hardy and Christian Hundertmark, who are known as Layer Cake, began writing graffiti as kids and combined their adult talents to form Layer Cake, a concept whereby they would go over one another's work indiscriminately, adding tags, calligraphy, and free expression to create new works that would capture the energy of the graffiti landscape in a contemporary manner. In 2009, Hardy published the book Beyond Illustration, the finest contemporary international and art and illustration, together with Yvonne Winkler. From 2005 to 2010, Patrick Hardy published Castle Magazine, an online magazine about urban art and illustration, together with Yvonne Winkler and Michael Matthias. They have published the book, The Art of Writing Your Name, Urban Calligraphy and Beyond, in 2017. Christian is an artist, creative director, who also runs the graphic design bureau C100 Studio and was author of the best-selling book series, The Art of Rebellion 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4, that came out in 2003, 2005, 2010, and 2016, which sold over 80,000 copies worldwide. Wow, that's impressive.
Thank you.
So, guys, you know, all that said, all those accomplishments in your resume stem from one simple act, and that was writing your name on trains. And so I want to explore this with you because you hail from Germany, and Munich specifically, which is known to have produced some really good style writers. And so, Christian, I want to start with you because these are your images, and I want you to tell me how you started and when you started writing graffiti and why.
Yeah, so I started in '89. I was 14 years old, and I saw the graffiti on the train lines when going, like I lived in the suburbs, and when I went into the city with my mom or alone, I saw the graffitis on the trains and everything. And so on one boring evening, I just started my first graffiti sketch. It was Batman, just anything.
Right. So at that point, you didn't have a name or a style, perhaps?
I had no clue what really what was going on. I knew that there were names, but I didn't have a special name at that moment. I just started with any word, and this was Batman. The next one was Anarchy.
And so once you started getting into the writing scene, because I know you guys grew up together, at what point did you realize that kids around you were also writers, or that you went out to look for writers to get into the scene?
In my case, I was very lucky. You know, I had a few friends of mine who were into graffiti as well at the same time. So I didn't really have to reach out to guys from the city or to guys who were already doing graffiti. Yeah, I just had my own crew from the beginning. So it was very easy.
Give me an idea of what you were looking at that time. Who were the writers that were really kind of taking over the lines? Who were the pioneers of Munich graffiti?
Yeah.
The pioneers, of course, were like Neon, like you had in the artist talk already, Scum, Stone, Stone Age Kids, Atlantic Island Warriors, Lumit, Mitch, Cheech. So that was like first generation Munich train riders, and of course we've been inspired by them.
Yeah, they're really, you know, top writers. They're very good writers. And I was talking to you about before the kind of reverence some of us had for German style writers of that era, because they were so good and they were so aggressive with style writing. But you know, in your case, Christian, you know, the kind of, I guess, indoctrination into this culture, and finding a name and kind of joining this secret society. You know, what was that like in Germany at the time? You know, I think politically, you know, at home, and you know, what was the resistance for this art form like when you were young?
There was this legal this Hall of Fame place where you could paint legal pieces, and a lot of writers met there, and so you also got introduced into the scene, and from then on it just started. Yeah, you met other graffiti writers and painted with them, and then it all went on.
So did painting legally, and I've heard this often about Europe, that in the early days they would allow kids space to paint and support some programming. Did that make it easier for you to develop as an artist and kind of have this double life as a bomber and also, you know, as this street artist?
Yeah, sort of. In Munich especially, like in my case, the first pieces that I painted were on the Hall of Fame walls, and I think it was 2 years later that I painted my first illegal piece, because in the first years you didn't have to, there was no sort of must that you have to paint illegal. You just had to find out that it is important. And in my case, I once sat together with another graffiti writer, and he told me, like, if you want to get up and get famous, you have to paint illegal. And that's when I realized, okay, it's sort of important. And the same night I painted my first illegal piece. So, but the first years I was at this legal Hall of Fame and hung out with the guys, and just started practicing.
And Patrick, I have a question for you, because we're looking at your silk pieces and they're really good and really developed works, right? And again, part of what's interesting to me about Germany is, and Europe, is going back to what he was saying about these spaces that are allowed for back then for the young kids to go paint and develop their art, so to speak. My question for you is your development in terms of as a style writer. You know, what were you looking at as in terms of referencing your work for your development? But
we're talking about the silk pieces, right?
Yeah, about you as a style writer, right? And
both.
How?
Okay.
What was influencing you?
Yeah, first of all, you know, I was
all the other graffiti writers.
Yeah, all the other graffiti
pieces that you saw.
Mainly in Munich, because you know that's just all that graffiti magazine stuff just started. So maybe I had 1 or 2 issues on the run, but that's it. So I mostly just saw the stuff which was, you know, on the line in Munich or and on the trains in Munich. So the guys we named before, like Neon, Scum, all these guys, the Munich old school, these were the guys who influenced me at the beginning, and a few guys in special like Rock and Flynn, but they are sadly they are not so famous internationally, but they did great stuff. So from the style side of things, I think I was mostly influenced by them. But they didn't do a lot of trains, more city bombing. So that was the difference between us. I wanted to go on train because to me that was like, you know, the top of the iceberg and yeah, the essence.
Yeah.
Right. So it was regional, right? It wasn't like you were looking at New York so much. You already had established your style masters, so to speak.
Knew about the movies and like the subway art book and things like that.
Yeah, of course.
But at that moment, people weren't traveling at that time. We mostly stayed in our city in Munich, so that's where most of the graffitis were that you saw in real life. And on the other hand, you knew like Style Wars and subway art, and knew where it was all coming from. And there was no internet at that time, and traveling started. I started traveling a bit later then, in the mid-90s.
Right. So let me ask you this, because in relationship to all the activity that was happening in Berlin, did you guys ever go to Berlin to kind of write? Was there any kind of relationship with writers there or competition between Berlin and Munich?
Unfortunately, I didn't go to Berlin at that time. I had some friends who were in Berlin or who came from Munich and moved to Berlin. But I went to Berlin, unfortunately, really late, like not when in the early 90s. But there were a couple of Berlin writers who came to Munich, and we met them when they hung out here.
Was there ever a rivalry between cities? Because in New York, you know, sometimes, you know, Bronx writers competed with other writers from other boroughs. Was that
no, it was fine. Like when people from other cities came to Munich, it was always a nice exchange in seeing other graffiti writers. It was all cool.
Right. There's something so interesting about Europeans and their politeness. And I think, you know, us American writers seem a little bit rough around the edges for you guys.
But you know, it's a difference if you grew up and do graffiti in New York, or if you grow up and do graffiti in Munich. You know, it's like the first thing. It's not train riding in Munich in the 90s was not urban; it was rural, for example. So. I think we've been very lucky to have been able to paint in conditions like that, you know.
Yeah.
And so, in terms like once the cat's out the bag in Munich, and there's all this graffiti on trains, what was the blowback, right? How was the city and police? Was there a vandal squad established? What were the areas of contention between the city and the graffiti writers?
Yes, even though it seemed like really easy and harmless, you still had to remember that Munich is in Bavaria, which is like the Texas of Germany in terms of law and order. So we had a vandal squad, and we also had at that time in the mid-90s.
The first one in Germany was
the first vandal squad was in Germany, in Munich. But we also had Bundesgrenzschutz, which is like border control or something. And these were like really fit guys with dogs and like with all this military stuff, which wasn't nice if you had experience with them.
Right. And what kind of consequences would a kid have if they got caught riding on a train?
Usually they tried to prove all pieces you did. And it was like when they caught you, they really tried to fuck you up. And like you had house raids and stuff like that. So if you had bad luck, you had really bad luck. So
what's interesting, you have this whole experience as your youth, you know, the rite of passage, so to speak, as writers and together, because you've known each other as kids. At a certain point, you guys start thinking about graffiti differently. You go to school, right? You start pursuing an art career. Let me ask you this, because I love asking people this. At what point did you know as a writer that perhaps you were going to be an artist? quote unquote?
To me, it was just because of graffiti I came up with the idea of
Exactly.
earning my money with something creative, and so I went to some special school, some kind of art school, not really university, but first step. And yeah, that was the first moment in my life when I got in touch with, you know, art and design. Before that, there was just graffiti. I had no idea, and yeah, I was interested in that as well. And of course, as more stuff you learn and tools you use, you realize you can't do everything what is in your head on a train. So maybe you have to start paint on canvas or doing sculptures or something. But at some point you realize the train is not enough anymore, or the time you have on the train is not enough anymore, something like this.
Yeah, for me it was also like the main ignition. Like the years before, I draw at home like every now and then, but with starting with my very first graffiti sketch, I started drawing day and night, and having the idea that I want to get better and better, and so it was clear that it must go towards this direction in job-wise.
Right. And collaboratively, you guys decided one day, let's make a cake, right?
It was yes and no, but it's a bit different story because there are some years in between. So because we went different directions in terms of
I studied in a different city and had a different focus. So there have been a few years we didn't really have contact.
Yeah, so we only met every now and then, and 6 years ago. Yeah, we met again, like because I moved to the area where Patrick lived, and we met more often. And then it was there was this solo show Patrick had, and I was there, and we were having a really good conversation. And then we were thinking about, let's start paint together, do a session together. And so it wasn't like planning layer cake. It was just like, let's have a good session and paint some canvases, and this was like the next ignition.
Right. And so the concept of layer cake in the studio was that you kind of go over each other.
No, because we in the beginning there was no concept. We just met in the studio and we started painting, and everyone had some unfinished canvases, and we just started. We didn't say like we have the idea. We found out that we have the concept after we finished a few paintings, and we were like, okay, this is it has an idea and a concept.
Yeah, and in the end it was, you know, coincidence, because we've been painting the whole evening, and we talked a lot. We talked about everything, but we didn't talk about what we've been doing there. And so, I don't know, after 3 or 4 hours, we looked at it and was like, hey, that's cool, maybe we should do it again.
Yeah.
So.
And when you think about, you know, kind of crossing over into this space where you're trying to make contemporary work, right? You're trying to find perhaps an aesthetic for yourselves. By mashing it up, you create this aesthetic. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the relationship with kind of contemporary abstract art. It seems like you guys throw writing, contemporary abstract art, and minimalist design. You know, it's two personalities, obviously, in the work. Tell me about arriving at that conclusion with the work.
It was just like starting, and each of one was painting, and it's just happening. It's not that we have to do like a sketch or something. We just start, and I do a paint in one area, Patrick in the other area, and then we just switch positions and start going over the parts of the other's work, and then the whole painting evolves.
Yeah, and what was interesting to me is like this way we're working is like really bringing you out of your own comfort zone. And when you do your solo works, yeah, you're often trapped in your own comfort zone. You know, you do the things you know that are work. The visitors on the show like that. Yeah, let's do this again. And if you work like that, not only that you do collaboration, but that I don't have control about what Christian is doing. So maybe he's overpainting the spot I loved the most, but you know, I have to work with that. So, and in the end,
it's like a safety net somehow. Like you start and you do stuff you usually won't do because you're maybe not brave enough. And now it's like you paint, and you know that, like in my position, I paint, and I know that Patrick is going to cross over parts of it, and something new is going to evolve, and that makes everything even more thrilling somehow, because you never know what is happening next.
Tell me about these commercial spaces. Like you're in terms of now that you have a design studio and a painting studio practice. I would imagine that there's an ambition, one, to have your works in public, but also in galleries and museums. Let's talk about transitioning over into those spaces in contemporary art, and how you're utilizing graffiti as an undercoat to enter into those spaces.
you know, sometimes I think in the end it's the same principle we had in graffiti at the first day. So it was like about writing your name on the wall or on the train so often that other people realize it, recognize it, remember it, and finally you get famous for it, something like that. We all know the story. And you know, nowadays it's like the same principle, but I don't paint trains anymore, but I hang my paintings in the next gallery in a different city.
Yeah.
So it feels like doing the same on a, I don't want to say grow up level, but on a, no, not really bigger scale, smaller scale now, but it's like.
And let me ask you, how do you pursue that? Do you pursue that as layer cake, or do you pursue it as individuals, or both?
Both and.
Yeah, because we're still doing our solo works, so it's not like we stopped the solo stuff and just doing layer cake now. Christian is doing his solo works, and he's even doing his design stuff. So I still do my solo stuff, my calligraphy stuff, if you want to call it like that. And yeah, so it's all of it.
You know, one of the things that I'd want to, you know, and I talk about this with artists all the time, right? Like right now, in the last, I don't know, 20 years or so, the urban aesthetic, the distressed aesthetic, is holding strong. It's still in vogue. It's kind of like a go-to aesthetic for post-graffiti practice for a lot of artists. And both, actually, you guys capture both of what's been happening in terms of geometric, modernist post-graffiti, and abstract expressionistic graffiti writing. And when you think about this in context to your work, right, that there's an evolutionary process in all of that, right? In that you want to find yourself, but you're also borrowing from history. Let's talk about that in your work as to, like, you know, what's kind of really informing the work, right? And you know what, let me just go back to this, because I think this captures it, right?
Exactly, yeah.
To me, it just, I don't really think about stuff like that when I'm doing it. Maybe after I did it, but it's, to me, it comes the same way, you know, when I traveled to the city as a kid and I saw the graffiti on the train line, and now because of graffiti, I got interested into the whole art world, and then now I see abstract words, abstract paintings, and you know, all the different stuff you can find in the art world. And of course, I'm a multi-layered person, so wouldn't I be interested in different stuff? And if I'm interested in that, of course I'm starting to work with that and mix it up. So and basically that's it. I don't really think about it. It's just like at the beginning maybe I was influenced by that writer, and at the beginning I copied his style until I found my own way to do it. And now it's like I see abstract painting and it's like, oh wow, I like that stuff. So how can I include it into what I'm doing right now? So
yeah,
Right.
I think also something to do that you're getting older. So we are now in our mid 40s. So it's like you have to progress somehow, and it's all inspiring. Like when we were kids, the main inspiration was all the other graffitis that you saw in the city. And now that you became older, you got also introduced into other forms of art, like urban contemporary or whatever, or even music. And so it's all inspiration for what we are doing now.
But still, I think that's very important. Still, that the focus and the background and the roots from graffiti are still very important to us. And
yeah, they never vanish. They will always be there. It's like when we started with Layer Cake, it was also like a sort of
backflash
search to going back to your roots, like finding out that this is like the main purpose why we are doing this. So it's not that like we are like very religious into graffiti, but it's like we found out that it is the biggest essence, and it's really important for us.
Yeah, and you know what's cool is the essence of collaboration. And these two slides that we just saw, the Versus project, first of all, tell me about the Versus project.
Like all the time, it was like coincidence, after we did the book, The Art of Writing Your Name, we've been connected to a lot of artists in that time and been close to them. And I just came up with the idea to do some collaboration work with Bisco Smith, because I thought maybe it would fit very good with my work. And he said yes, and I told that to Christian, and he said, hey, let's do it, all three of us. Maybe it could be the next project. So so born was the idea to the effect we experienced, that painting together brought us out of our comfort zone and really let us find new ways.
And to extend it or take it to another level. And so we thought about what other artists could fit. And then we had we wrote a couple of emails to contact them. And we had a first Skype chat with Bisco, and it all fit really well, even though he was in New York, which made it much more interesting, because we now had to start the canvas in Munich and send it over to New York or to where the other artists live. And then they have to work on it, send it back to us. And it's like going back and forth a couple of times and see what is going to happen. So it was like taking the idea of Layer Cake to a next level.
It's fantastic. I like that concept a lot. So Christian, let's talk about your work now. The Art of Rebellion. And why did you publish this book? Why is this book so important? And also, what was the appeal? Why it's a very successful book?
So in the mid-90s, I started studying graphic design and got into design in general. And I was a bit not bored, but I didn't do that much graffiti at that time. And in the late 90s, this whole street art thing came over to Europe with artists like Banksy and all the other stuff like London Police and stuff like that. And so I got into this, and there were a lot of other former graffiti writers who also started like doing posters and stuff like that and doing like the more easier version of doing work in public space. And it was really interesting, and I had a really nice time. Like I was traveling and meeting other artists, and at one point I thought it's funny, there is no book about this new phenomenon. And so, yeah, the idea was born, and I was lucky that I have a friend, like a former graffiti buddy, and he had a publishing house. He owned a publishing house. And so we just started the first Out of Rebellion book, and it came out, and we were really lucky because it was more or less the first book about this street art phenomenon, and people liked it, and it was becoming a bestseller, which we never expected it to be.
Congratulations. Now in the
Thank
studio,
you.
you're venturing off into new territory with your work, right? Away from graffiti, clearly thinking differently about painting and shapes and painting. Tell me about what you're trying to arrive at with these paintings.
When I got into graphic design, I found out about all the different software and tools, and it was really interesting. And so I got better in this and started doing graphic jobs. And at one point I thought that it would be interesting to find a transition from working on the computer to working on the canvas again. So now it's like going back and forth, like doing works on the computer and also trying to do work with this style on a canvas as well. So this is
So now when you let's talk about this transition into the business of art, right? And you seem committed to it. When you bring these works to the market, how are they perceived, and how do you present them? Is it from, because language is very important, right? And you guys care a lot about graffiti. Do you present this as the offspring of graffiti, or is this just a contemporary work to you?
I think it's a mix between both of it, because it's still the main roots are in graffiti, because it's done with materials which you use for working on a mural or on a train or wherever, like spray cans and acrylic paint, and and it's and then it's like forming something new with it. So, but still, it's like you have on one side you have the tools, like the old tools like markers and paint, and on the other hand you have the tools like the computer, where you have graphic shapes, and so I try to combine it somehow and find something new with it.
So my curiosity leads me, and I ask this often about the artists, technology and social media and stuff allows a lot of artists to develop technique, not thesis, right? And whereas you have a lot of thesis in the layer cake work, I'm wondering if in this type of work, is it just an exercise in graphic design, or is there something deeper in the work? Or is it just what you see is what you get?
I wouldn't say it's like an exercise. It's like, for me in personal, it's like some sort of relaxation from graphic design, because I really like the fact that when you work on a mural or on a canvas, you don't have the Command Z cardboard where you can go back to an older version. So you have to cope with the things that's happening, because when you work on the computer, you can always go to the last version and everything is safe. And I really like the fact that when you're working on a wall, this is not possible. And that's also what's interesting, like when you extend it to layer cake, because there you have like the other factor, Patrick, who is also reacting towards my paint or to our paint.
One of the things I found this really quite beautiful, this it's almost like Japanese strokes on this pottery.
Yeah, what is kind of interesting is when we started with layer cake, my works were much more graphic and clear. And when started working with Patrick, and he was much more into this dirty graffiti tagging thing, the more we worked together, the more I also started getting my brushes out again, and enjoying playing, doing dirty work again. So it's like he influenced me in this way, and I think it's also on the opposite side as well. So
I started buying tape rolls.
Yeah, well, let's talk about your work, Patrick, because you have an interesting background. You really dug in deep with calligraphy. And of course, you know, the Graffiti movement was such a phenomena, and this adapting, you know, style writing or handwriting to traditional historic calligraphy is kind of an interesting hybrid. Tell me about how when you got into calligraphy and how you decided to kind of pursue it.
Yeah. I got into calligraphy at university. I was lucky enough, I think it was the last university in whole Germany who had a focus on calligraphy, not only typography, but especially calligraphy. And I loved my professor from the first minute, and he loved my work. So yeah, it was an easy task for me to stay there and learn that. And even it was a design study, I had focus on calligraphy, especially free calligraphy. So I always say it's, in the end, I didn't study design, I studied art. And yeah, then there I came in touch with calligraphy. And you know, when I first saw Shoe stuff, I think he started with it 2007 or something.
Yeah.
For me, it was like a totally normal thing that you go from graffiti and tagging to classic calligraphy, but I just didn't came up with the idea to do it with that kind of tool in that scale, how he did it. So when I first saw it, it was like, of course, so why not? I can do it with a pen and a paper. Why didn't I do it on the wall? Why shouldn't I? So of course it has to be like this way. So and so yeah, when I began my research, I think it was a few years later than 2007. So there was already a lot of stuff by Schuh, and a whole movement started, as you can see now. So now it's a worldwide movement. It's like the new graffiti thing or something, I don't know. And yeah, but to me it came really naturally because I learned it at university, just in coincidence again. So.
No, and it worked out beautifully. I mean, it's interesting how graffiti kind of gave a fresh breath of air to calligraphy, and we've seen it. I've been fortunate enough to have met some of the, you know, in Middle East, some of the best calligraphers, and be part of the Sharjah Biennale with El Cid and Zephyr was out there, and you learn about the importance of the spiritual importance of the line of writing. It's such a beautiful art form of writing. It's much more than writing a name, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. It's as you can see my stuff, there is no readable thing in the whole painting. So to me, it's totally not about reading some text. It's really about the gesture, you know, about the movement, what you can do with your hand, about the expression, and yeah, that's what I love about it. And yeah, it's really interesting because what you say. When I remember when I was at university, I started '99, like I said, all the guys in my class, all my classmates didn't like calligraphy at all because it like wow, what can I use it for? And it's so hard work. It takes so much time. And you know, now 10-15 years later, I'm doing lectures there, and the classroom is full. So maybe calligraphy did something for this. Yes. So there's really a huge interest now, and it wasn't like this 10-15 years ago.
No, and it wasn't. And I'll share something with you. I first did what it wasn't called calligraffiti back then, but I was doing calligraphy graffiti, so to speak, for commercially for an artist I know, Antonio Lopez, and it was for the cover of an Italian magazine called Vanity. And it was interesting in that exercise because I wasn't even thinking about graffiti and calligraphy. It was under art direction that I was asked, can you combine your hand style, your graffiti hand style with calligraphy? And I was just like, it was really basically, you know, kind of a different energy in terms of writing, because if you think about historically, writers here wrote with uni-wides and mini-wides, right? And that's just a blown out calligraphy pen. And yeah, it was a revelation, you know, and to see it where it is now, it's beyond anything I could have comprehended back then. Because I think especially because you tie it to both history and to the contemporary work.
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah. It's like
So,
you build a bridge between the
right.
old and the new.
So now in your practice now, you know, you're again going back to writing, the hand style, the distressed work, that, you know, the tagging is prominent in your work. You know, one of the things that was in discussion about your work was and again, going back to influences where, you know, the Miami style writing, like the Inkheads and Jose Parla had that swift,
Yeah, yeah.
that kind of that line, that which is different from the New York hand styles.
Yeah.
Was that influencing you at all?
Of course, totally. Jose Parla, one of my favorite artists. So I think take him and Futura, and it's fine. So I can't
Yeah,
deny it.
yeah, Futura had such a beautiful hand. But you know, as of late, this is a more current painting, right? This series, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, that's from this year. Yeah. Like the first time I'm really doing the series. So I think it's about 25, 30 paintings, all going in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I was really enamored by some of them. I thought they were quite good, and it's such an interesting direction for you. And I thought to myself, where's he going to go with this? When I saw the first ones, and tell me a little bit about arriving at this with your paintings. Why going corner to corner?
It's really interesting because I don't know if I would do these paintings if I wouldn't have done the layer cake stuff for Christian, because when we do the layer cake paintings, to me it always feels a little bit like he is cleaning up my chaos, you know, with his graphic stuff. So and it was like this was feeling good to me. So and so I realized maybe I need to have something in the focus and more clean parts on my paintings. So, and of course I didn't want to do it exactly like we do it with layer cake. And so this was why I came up with the idea of doing this, I call them beams. And the one you're showing is like, it was the first one. And to be honest, I had a totally different idea in my head. And this was just a failure in the end. But it was like, oh shit, what had I done? So go to bed and sleep overnight. And next day I came to the studio again and was like, hey, it looks cool somehow. Maybe I should just add some dots here and some drips there, and it's finished. And as you can see, it was finished. And yeah, so this brought me to a whole series of 20, 30 paintings now. And But don't ask me. I don't know. Maybe it's over now. Maybe I'm doing the same thing next year. At the moment, I don't know. Still feels good, but maybe it's finished now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe it's also because at that time we also were working on the Versus project, where we got canvases from all the other artists, and so it was like I'm just thinking that maybe it was like sort of relaxation from the stress we had, like with coping with the work of other artists, and like how we gonna bring our work into it. So
it's a clean thing with
yeah.
structure now again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So it seems to me, that, I mean, you guys have this wonderful history together, but again, you don't see yourself tethered to each other. You see yourself tethered to a community.
Definitely. We are, yeah, it's also the same with the Versus project. Like when we started getting in touch with all the other artists, it's even though some of them we never met in real life, it's like we became friends and worked together, even though some of the artists are like thousands of kilometers away from us, and it's still like a bond is coming up.
But you know, that's the special thing to graffiti in art. I think that's you can't compare that with any other field in art. It's like when we've been 15. You know, I don't go to another European city. I don't know anybody there, but maybe I don't. You know, I go to Rome, but I know someone in Stockholm, and he knows someone in Rome, and yeah, of course you can sleep at his place. I called him. It's fine. So
it's like a big community, and this is what's still making it really interesting for us. And it's like friendship, which is also like one of the great part about this whole layer cake thing, because like we mentioned before, we went different ways for a couple of years, and now since 5 years we are like this again, like yeah, phone calls every day. He's like my wife. It's really funny. And
no, you mentioned something really interesting, right? Because graffiti writers are those who are respected anyway, have what I call graffiti or hip hop passports, right? Wherever you go, you'll find your tribe and you get in, right? And contemporary artists have it differently. They're locked in differently into a smaller community, a really narrow community, so to speak. But our community is phenomenal and getting bigger and bigger, and globally, it's just getting just saturated. And so that means that's good for us, because I think as we get older, and again, as young artists mature and grow and have the means to support and collect artists, they'll be collecting from within, right? That you, myself, and others over the years have been cultivating younger artists in practice, but also potential collectors, writers, curators.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, you get in touch with so many generations as well now. You know, the youngest guys are maybe in their early 20s, and they are already doing burners. Like you watch it, this and this, like how did he do that?
Yeah.
So and
on the other hand, you have older artists like us, or even more. Like
much
Jeff.
more renowned guys. Who are totally in the contemporary world, and still the same. You know, you begin your emails with "Hey Loco, what's up?" So it's still in the middle.
Yeah.
And this guy is hanging in, every important collection in the world. So
he's talking about Chess for your
For example. So
yeah,
it is
like an honor to get in contact with all the heroes from our youth. Like you saw them in like. It's the same with you. Like I know you from Style Wars.
Yeah, man.
Like from the backstage, and now we are having a chat. It's like it's like when you we would never have to met.
I'll share this with you, because just before I got on with you, Henry Chalfant and I had a talk, and I was telling him about these talks that I have with artists, and how often they mentioned Style Wars or Marty Cooper, Tony Silver, and that's, you know, their legacy as well is so intertwined with ours, with mine, and that you guys remember that. It's really, it's nice. It's really nice.
It's like Bible. It's like
Yeah.
for me, it's like the Subway Art book and Style Wars. It's like the Bible and the religion, and it's like yeah, it's like our essence of everything we are doing now. And
I have the perfect example. You know, when we did the book, the Art of Writing a Name, and you're in that book, right? So the happiest moment, or the best photo of all the photos I got of all the artists was like the Henry Chandler picture of you riding the train.
yeah,
You know?
Yeah, New Lots Avenue. That's a yeah.
and the other thing which was also making us really happy was we got Jasper Yorkes writing the intro for us, which was an honor in itself. And when we got the text sent from him, the first sentence is, "This is a graffiti book." And no, this was our first
sentence,
but
from our introduction was, "This is a graffiti book." This is the first sentence the book starts with, and he wrote us like, "The best, thanks for the book, it's awesome, but the best thing is the first sentence. This is a graffiti book, because, you know, graffiti is a lifestyle, and urban art and street art protected lifestyle." And, you know, you couldn't be more honored.
Yeah,
So
you know, it's interesting as you get older. Well, for me anyway, as I get older, it's a very interesting. You said something interesting about protecting the lifestyle, the culture, and it's interesting how the culture polices itself, right, and self-corrects itself. And one of the things that I like about doing these talks is that everybody gets to kind of tell their story, and you know, and we'll. You know, you're up against public debate, you know, it's amongst your peers, and people will add to that, right? And that's one of the things I like, is that kind of democracy amongst us. And sometimes it's not democracy. Sometimes, you know, you got some really kind of hardcore fascist writers that don't give a fuck, and you know, have their version of a story. But that you know, that said, I appreciate you guys, you know, for taking the time with me tonight to explore your work and the history of Munich graffiti. So on behalf of the Museum of Graffiti, our staff, our crew, our founders, we thank you for taking the time out. And, you know, I appreciate you sharing your work and your story.
Thank you. It was a really big honor for us and made us super happy. Before, when we were waiting for your call, we were like, we would have never imagined that this whole, like the first graffitis we did would ever bring us to having a conversation with you, and like with this, like, yeah, we would have never imagined this. So it's crazy, and we are really happy about this.
I'm happy to hear that. We'll keep the conversation going on the other side.
Yeah, great. Cool.
All right. Thank you both. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.